It's my pleasure to talk to Bob Carzoli, ProCrewz Chairman of the Board and CEO, about the biggest issue, which I guess we don't have to really kind of set the table. People in here are very familiar with the crisis in crewing.
Thanks, Ken. So we have put together what we think and has proven to be a very effective way to start replacing or to start finding new technicians to fill the key positions that are the hardest to fill, right? TD, A1, V1, lead EVS, graphics, scorebox operator, surprisingly. And so we've broken it into three components. There's recruitment, there's training, and there's placement.
First of all, a quick question for people in the audience. Who thinks they will have a question for Bob during this session? Can I show of hands? Okay, we have Devin and Howard, definitely. Okay, that's good. So we will leave some time for those conversations because I'm sure they'll kick off other questions. But let's start with, I know that you and I had a little email exchange of some of the topics. Over the last 2 years, 3 years, you've made it very clear on our Clean Freaks calls and all of our events that this is a crisis happening. This is not a US problem only. We did an event in Scotland 2 weeks ago, or a couple months back, that this was the problem there. We had a call yesterday, a Freaks call with Bill Morris from CTV, said 25% of the people in the UK have left the industry. So let's talk about this next generation talent, because obviously you can't fill a slot unless somebody wants to try to be there to fill it. So what do you see as the challenge and the opportunities for RSNs? Because personally, I think the RSNs are in a good spot to maybe build relationships with local schools and what have you to kind of create feeder systems. Give us your sense on how we kind of make this happen along with that video.
Well, like we talked about, right, you have to break down the next generation of technicians have to get brought into this industry on a three-step plan. First has to be recruitment, and we're doing a lot of that, and SVG's doing that, whether it's through colleges and universities, HBCUs, veterans programs, hopefully some, traction on social media. And then you got to get them trained. And we think we've come up and we've got some very successful routines that we've used to train the next level of technicians here in Chicago and around the country. And then the most important part, and I think this is where we have a hugely distinct advantage, both in our organization and the RSN industry, is placement, right? It doesn't do you any good to train somebody. If you're going to teach me how to be a baker and I can't get a job in a bakery, it's a waste of time. So, one of the advantages that we have is because our reach is clearly, at least across North America, we have the ability to get people trained and then start plugging people into individual markets where there's the greatest need. So, Ken's right. I mean, we've lost 30% of the technicians in this industry. And it's for a whole wide variety of reasons, right? I mean, we have a graying culture on the production side. Amy Scheller and I were just in Boston a couple weeks ago at the US Open. We saw you there. And her and I sat down in the lunch tent one day, and there was about 250 people in the tent, and she looked at me and she goes, "Look around the tent. This is what the problem with our industry is." And it's all 50, 60, and 70-year-old white males who were in that tent 30 years ago, right? And, I joked our international director, Emmett, I think was around when young Tom Morris was winning the British Open. And but that's what our problem is, right? And now we're not just competing, we're not just competing with other, broadcasters or stations. I mean, we're competing with Apple and Facebook and Google and technology companies. We're competing with jobs that people don't have to leave their house for, right? No matter what you say, when you work in the field, and I've spent 25 years also working in the field with my brother as a camera operator, it's a long day. It's hard work. And, when you're bent over inside the belly of a truck pulling out, 95-pound cameras and 85-pound sticks in the middle of a 95-degree day or on, a pouring rainstorm, sitting in my house working on a computer remotely seems pretty attractive. So, the ecosystem that Mike McCarthy's going to give me $10 every time I say ecosystem, by the way. The ecosystem that we expect our people to work in, it's technology, but there's still manual labor that goes along with it, and that's never going to go away. And so we're now competing with equal pay, easier work, and more remote opportunities.
Sure. Actually, let me throw in 2 more places you're competing. When we did our event at SoFi, sorry, excuse me.
I don't know the Heimlich.
Sorry. When we did our event at SoFi Stadium, every week the venue show, the in-venue show for that stadium has 100 people working the show. So that obviously impacts you a little bit. And then also colleges and universities. And by the way, everybody who thinks this is a bigger issue and wonder where we're going to find people has to come to our college summit next year, because the college campuses, ESPNU and there's hundreds of kids on these campuses getting involved and working terribly, even worse hours for, $40 a day, $75 a day. But so there is an opportunity, I think, there to connect some dots to maybe fill that in. And they've had the same problem, which is, by the way, when they didn't have students working in the productions for a year or two, and now the students are coming back, there's no one there to train those kids because they were always trained by the kids from the previous year. So this is a very complicated problem.
So the only thing I would say is our experience has been, and by the way, we've worked with Mark Holsey and Big Ten for, I don't know, a decade and a half now, and the problem is all the college kids, I think I said this at the summit a few years ago, if my son's actually here, he's our CTO, if my son went to Northwestern and then decided to come out and be a graphics operator in A1, I'd beat him with a baseball bat. And, the problem is now is you have college kids that, they like doing camera when they're a freshman and sophomore, or they like being an EVS operator or a Dreamcatcher operator their junior year. But everybody wants to be Mike Fox, who's the Cubs director who's here today. Everybody wants to be Mike McCarthy. Everybody wants to be, the next Jeff Mason or Jerry Steinberg. No one wants to be a camera operator for the next 30 years. No one wants to be a TD for the next 35 years. And where that was a great position and a great way to make a living and have a really good life, be able to raise a family, make good money, it's harder and harder to find those people.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. Why don't you tell us about the training program itself and how you how people will get involved with it as far as applying for a position, and then sort of how you kind of see this rolling out as a pragmatic, realistic, effective program.
Sure. So the first thing that we did is we recognized that everybody that had a training idea typically assigned it to somebody in the organization who had 25 other responsibilities. And it was a really hot topic for a week or two, and then they went back to the 25 other jobs they had, and training kind of fell by the by. So the first thing we did is we hired an outstanding young woman from the University of Pittsburgh, Kelly Hammonds, who helped oversee the ACC college program. NEP built a beautiful training facility there. And we brought Kelly on, and Kelly is actually our National Director of Training and Recruitment. So number one, we've dedicated the resources internally to make sure that we have somebody whose only job it is to be in charge of training. The other thing that we did is we took a look and said, and I talked about this earlier, right? Training has to be broken into 3 components. There has to be recruiting, right? You have to go out. I'm a sales guy, right? So I got to knock on 50 doors to get 10 appointments, to do 3 proposals, to get 1 customer. It's no different when you're recruiting technicians, right? Everybody wants to be in the TV business until they realize they're working nights, weekends, and holidays. You're working good weather, bad weather. You maybe see your wife and your kids once or twice a week, depending on whether there's going to be a Game 5, Game 6, or Game 7. So you've got to kind of go through and you've got to line up enough young people that have a passion for sports, have a good attitude, and have some level of aptitude. And then you plug them into the system, right? So then the next thing you have to do is you have to match up that young person with an experienced operator. No offense, I know some people are looking at, we're going to park a truck up in Minneapolis for 4 days, and we're going to do 4 games. We're going to do 4 days. It's a waste of time and money. I can just tell you, I've done it for the NBA, we've done it for the NHL. It doesn't work. We've had 50 people show up in Memphis, and by the time we made air, I'm running camera, and we're down to 7 people. Because everyone's like, this sucks, this is hard work, and this isn't what I want to do. So the only way you can do this, and I akin it to training someone how to fly, right? They sit in the passenger seat with an experienced pilot, Mr. Grange's son, and they learn over time. And eventually they get to run after the takeoff, they get to fly the plane for a few minutes. And then they get to fly the plane a little bit longer. And then they get to help on landing, they get to help on takeoff. And eventually they get to the point where they are able to take off, fly the plane, and land with an experienced pilot sitting next to them. And at some point, that experienced pilot comes back and says, this person is approved to fly the plane on their own. Now, maybe we get on the radio and we help talk them through if there's a problem or an issue, but eventually you get the license to solo. We've been doing that for the last 3 years. And we have found, I'm going to say, between 20 and 30 high-quality technicians. In fact, we just finished training a young woman who was a studio TD, who's now TDing Mike McCarthy's show at Marquee, which is 16, 17 cameras, 8 EVS, a very big show. And this is somebody who sat at the hip of one of our top young TDs, Mario Calero. He spent months with her. She eventually got to TD an inning. She got to TD an interview. She got to TD 3 innings and then 4 innings. And eventually, she got to TD an entire game sitting next to Mike Fox and Mike Leary, with Mario sitting behind her. And if she ran into a bit of a jam, he was able to help her out. And she's done an amazing job. And we've had success with an A1 in New Orleans and an A1 in Vancouver and technicians all over the country, so that when the Cincinnati Reds, who are in town for the last 3 days, and we're short somebody, well, we now have a great TD that can sit in the chair, and we don't have to travel somebody in for the visiting show. We don't have to give up quality either. And then we get to the third part, which is placement. You've got to have a job. Well, we're going to be responsible for almost 27,000 events this year, which is remarkable to me when I hear myself say that. But the advantage of that is it gives us the opportunity to be able to say, if you want to make a living, we can find you, we can train you, and we can give you away. Now, it may not necessarily be in your home market. You may have to move. You may have to spend part of the year in Charlotte and Raleigh and the other half of the year in Chicago or New York. But we can give you a pathway to making $100,000, $110,000. It's worked. So the last component of this, which is the hardest part, someone's got to pay for this. Right? It's not free. We've invested roughly about $1.3 million in this program because you have to pay the person who trains extra money, and you have to pay the person who's being trained, right? The day of come out and work for free until you're ready to go. I mean, if anybody's filled up their tank with gas in the last 6 months, we know that that's not a practical solution. And so you have to make it attractive, right? We try to make the workplace attractive. We try to make the income attractive. Our general counsel, Mike Campolo, is here somewhere. And we've negotiated with IATSE into their training program. Mike's now working with IBW, where we have gotten, or we've been able to negotiate a nice bump so that we make it attractive for the trainer and a decent amount of money for the trainee. And then we're able to kind of filter through. Listen, everybody in this room that's been doing this forever knows, in a week or two, don't you? Right? If there's a technician that shows up, and I don't even think it takes a week or two. By 3 or 4 shows, this person has the ability, the aptitude, and the attitude, and this person doesn't. Now, there's still people in this industry that have worked for 35 years that have lousy attitudes. But we are having a lot of success. So paying for it is what we're now doing with our customers. And we've gone to all of our customers, from Bally's to Nesson to Marquee, and we've essentially said, we don't need you to pay for all of it, but we need help paying for part of it. And what we've talked about is a 0.95% of gross payroll service fee that is for training, compliance, safety, kind of the whole gamut of things. And to their credit, with the exception of most of our customers, with the exception of one of our customers, all of our customers.
I was going to say.
No, with the exception of one of our customers, all of our customers have agreed because, listen, and by the way, this isn't going to solve the problem tomorrow, right? This isn't some Harry Potter magic wand that we're going to wave and instantly, we're going to find a whole bunch of technicians and there's not going to be any more travel. I mean, our travel from 2021 to 2022 is up 400%, right? So it's not only are you traveling more people, but I'm sure your airline tickets here are more expensive than you anticipated. Hotel rooms, even with the great SVG discount, are more expensive. If you can even find rent-a-cars, I mean, how many places are we sending people that we've got to coordinate 2 or 3 flights because they're sharing a car? And we've asked our customers to help us pay. And I think we're 18 to 24 months away from having enough people in the pipeline. We think with this program, we can put between 60 and 100 new high-level technicians into the ecosystem. That's 2 times, that's $20, into the ecosystem so that we can start to make sure that we are covered in all of the markets that we work in.
Excellent, that's great. So before we get to questions, I'm going to spend 30 seconds talking about HBCU Bridge, just real quick, because we're going to launch this program at SVG hopefully next week. But one of the other big issues, obviously, is diversity in the industry, not just women, but also people of color. One of the things we've done is we're working with a company who has very deep roots through the Tom Joyner Foundation and some other on-air personalities, African American, to create a program called HBCU Bridge. The way it will work is there will be an application process for everyone in this room, and if you want to open up opportunities, whether it is behind the scenes, but also to hire somebody, you fill out this application, you say, we're based in Florida, and we would love to have some students from the local schools come in to at least experience our program, or even better, to Bob's point, we want to hire somebody as an intern or as a PA. This woman from Barbara Livingston, she will then contact schools in the area on behalf of you, do some vetting, do some pre-interviewing so that you'll get qualified candidates as opposed to this flood of 1,000 applications. And to your point, if you get 50 applications, 6 of them are serious, 40 or 7 are. So the good news is she'll do some vetting. This will be launched next week. More details to follow. But I do want to see if there's any questions. And Jason, how much time do we have, roughly? Okay.
So before I do get to that, I do kind of want to, and this isn't meant to be threatening or overwhelming, but we are asking our customers, and again, almost all of them have agreed to pay. So ultimately, the people that are helping us pay for this program are going to be our customers that benefit the most, right? So if we've got a visiting show in a marketplace and that visiting team is somebody that's been participatory in our program and we're short 2 people, that team is going to get the local technician who came through our training program, and the organization that either isn't a customer or didn't help won't. And that's purely, and I say that more for the edification of our customers who are paying. They're going to receive the most immediate benefit. And we think that, listen, we know this works, right? The problem that we have with training, and this isn't an affront to Ken, we sat in New York during the Tech Summit, or it's not the Tech Summit anymore, it's the League Summit.
The Summit.
The Summit. And we sat around a room, and here's what my analogy is. It's like we're standing in the middle of the street and our house is on fire, right? And when you sit around these rooms and you brainstorm, it's like standing in front on the street with your house on fire and talking about sprinkler systems and fire extinguishers and escape plans and smoke detectors. Well, that's great, right? But what we need now are water, hoses, and firemen. We know that this program that we've launched, that, by the way, this isn't some pie in the sky, we think it's going to work. We know it's going to work. I mean, we've worked with Fletcher for years on finding good young people, matching them up with experienced operators, and now I'd say, a quarter of Dan's guys are guys that kind of came up through the ranks, maybe even more than that. And, and they learned at the hip of an experienced robotic camera operator. And so we know this works. And by the way, it's worked because we've done it and we spent our money on it, and I clearly wouldn't keep spending money on things that didn't have a return for us. So.
All right, there you go. Excellent, thanks. All right, Howard.
You asked Jason if we have enough time for questions. In my mind, this is the lifeblood of why we're here. And you can make a case that this 30 minutes could be inverted, and 30 minutes for everything else and 7.5 hours for this. And I think, Bob, you could actually command the stage for 7.5 hours. So I have actually 2 questions, one macro and one real more specific, and I'll ask them separately. So the first one is, it's 12 to 18 months, you say, or 18 to 24 months. The worst thing we can do is be here a year later and you give an update, a progress report about what PPI is doing. So what plans do you have to communicate over this next year at periodic points the progress?
Well, we actually talked about that yesterday in a planning session, and there was all this discussions about tracking expenses and everything else. Listen, the only thing that matters is going to be when Kendall has a show for a Bally's region in Oklahoma City, and we now don't have to travel a V1 in, or when the Boston Bruins are playing in Chicago and we don't have to bring in an EVS operator from somewhere. So, I mean, I think simply put, everyone's going to notice, because you're going to see a dial back in terms of the number of asses we have to put on airplanes and in rental cars. Because listen, the price of poker is going up for people. We haven't, and Mike probably doesn't want me to say this out loud, right? But we see customers voluntarily raising rates dramatically, right? Our friends in Atlanta at Turner have raised what they're paying technicians. We're working with the new golf league. They're paying technicians a significant amount of money. I saw Fox announce, Mr. Shanks announced that they're going to have another year of USFL football, which is 200 technicians in Birmingham every week for 12 or 14 weeks. So, and I can tell you, it's around the corner. Here's what else you're going to start hearing from our union partners and even from our non-union. I need a fuel stipend, right? It's costing me $20, an extra $20 a day. So I'm getting $20 for parking, and now I want $15 in a fuel stipend. So I think to answer your question, Howard, I think the answer is going to be everyone's going to either know it's working or they're going to know it's not working. And I think that'll be on a customer by customer basis. If we see travel go down for you in Boston, or for Mike Webb and Jeannie Palmer in New York, and for Kendall in one of her 21 regions, I think it'll be obvious, because you'll see what your expenses are going down. And listen, I wouldn't stand up here and tell you that we think it's going to work. I wouldn't stand up here and tell you we hope it's going to work. I'm standing up here and telling you we've seen it work, and we know it's going to work. And certainly with the partnerships that we have with many of you, as well as with SVG and other organizations, it's a matter of us pumping enough good quality young people in the system. And by the way, nephews, nieces, next door neighbors' kids, sons, daughters. I mean, we've got an EP in here whose son was home from school this summer and called us up and said, hey, he's looking to hop into the business. And you know what? He's been an absolute rock star for us. Right? I have a buddy of mine that I play golf with in Arizona who's got a grandson who just worked as a runner on the Stanley Cup Finals for NHL Network. And you know what? They called up and said he has the caddy motto: show up, keep up, and shut up. And they loved him. And so listen, you can all help be a solution too here, right? I mean, this is a great life, right? If you like sports, right? If you like kind of being a little bit of a cowboy, and you're not tied to an office, or you're tied to a 9-to-5 schedule, and working a Pittsburgh Penguins game and watching Sidney Crosby play and doing that 40 times a year is attractive to you, or attractive to the neighbor's kid, or attractive to a nephew or a niece, pick up the phone and call us, and we'll have a much more formal. Right, Amy? We're going to have a much more formal way for you to contact us on this. No one tells me anything anymore, by the way. I have to ask. So
let me be.
Go
ahead, Howard.
Sure.
My second question is, in Nesson, we've committed to HDR. For us, it's 4K. Sinclair has, their HDR, exhibit here. Video is the linchpin of HDR, and video there's some issues with video depth around the country that gives me real pause, given that we are very ambitious, and HDR is going to become, I think, more and more mainstream. How do you specifically tackle that problem?
Same way you tackle all the problems, right? You get people trained, and you put them alongside somebody who's really good at it, and you wait until they tell you that they're ready to go. Listen, there's no magic answer to this, right? This is hard work. It's going to take a lot of time and effort and resources on our part. We're going to work with you individually on a client-by-client basis as to what your individual issues and needs are. And we're going to pound and we're going to hammer until we have enough people And by the way, Mike Davies always gives me a really hard time. And by the way, I still don't have his dollar. I predicted the exact day that the baseball strike about lockout would end. Mike said I was wrong, and he promised me an autographed $1 bill. He sent me a picture, but I have yet to receive it. I think he spent it on vacation. So, listen, if you think March, April, and May were bad, I have bad news for you. August, September, and October are going to be worse.
So Oscar Sanchez, who's with CONCACAF, who I follow on LinkedIn, and he always posts about getting his career and his start and the excitement of joining this industry. But then yesterday he posted a little slide thing that was about where the next generation solve this problem is? Retired people and retired executives, and maybe trying to pull them out of retirement and give them. What's your sense on that? Because obviously there have been people who've left and maybe aren't coming back. But do you think there's any hope that you can pull 5, 6, 7% of people back?
Do we want to? I mean, do we really want? Listen, we lost in Houston for the Astros and the Rockets. We lost 5, 6 camera operators. Both of our utilities were over 70 years old. One guy couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. I mean, listen, I'm not.
We have been doing it right.
Yeah, and maybe there's ways. I mean, maybe the Pat Sullivans and the Phil Garvins. Maybe there's a way to help. Fill maybe the EIC shortage.
So short term can solve the problem, but obviously you'd have the problem in another year or two.
Yeah. Listen, you're standing in front of the fire again, and you're talking about, we really need smoke detectors, right? Well. Yeah, that'd be great. When the house burns down and we build it back up, we'll put smoke detectors in next time. But right now we need water hoses and firemen, and this is the plan to be able to do that. And quite frankly, I would much rather have a young kid like Mike Santini's son, who is going to be a rock star in this business, who I've got to buy some time with. I'll tell one more quick story. So when Marquis took over the Cubs, their producer and director are both very good friends of mine, and we got them to agree that they came to us and said, we want all brand new people. And this is the Cubs. This is, same guys for 30 years, right? And they said, we want all brand new people, we want all young people, and we want people that have a great attitude. We'll teach them how to do baseball. And you know what? I would argue that Marquis has some of the best broadcasts. And if you look across, I think our average age for a camera operator is 28 or 29 years old. I think our TDs are all under 30, right? Our EVS room with a handful of a few guys are all between 25 and 35, Mike. I mean, it's, our A1s are young people, right? And guess what? They can't wait to get to the ballpark. I mean, we were there for the game on Tuesday. One of the guys I know is 35. He's going to be a dad for the first time, and he was so excited. And you just see these young kids that have this incredibly great attitude, and it reminds you when you first got in the business, right, before we had the chance to beat the enthusiasm out of you. And, that's who I want, right? I want someone who's going to work, and by the way, that's the other problem we're having right now is burnout, right? I want someone that thinks working 35 days in a row doing Pirates and Penguins games and then filling in for us on Penn State football or, working concerts and sporting events all in, and never having a day, think it's the greatest thing in the world, right? Our problem right now is we've got burnout, and I'm telling you, that's what's going to make this worse when we get to August, September, and October. People in the field are absolutely, completely exhausted.
So in terms of the let's go timeline here, because Howard mentioned the deliverables and understanding what's success. But do you have, when we get to next year, do you want to say we've had, what's the goal? Is 30 people going through this program, 150, 20? What do you think is a successful number? Number one, and number two is what is the timeline? So if someone joins this program, so to speak, on September 1st, are they ready for the industry by December, January? What's your sense on that, or maybe faster if they're more capable, that kind of stuff?
So I hate making a prediction to say we're going to have 80 brand new people by June 30th of 2023. I think that's impossible because none of us knows. I mean, we've clearly learned over the last 2 years, none of us knows what the hell's going to happen. I think if we were to get feedback from our customers that said, "Wow, We really like the new TD in Chicago. We really have a great new EVS operator in Atlanta. You know, we now have two quality, 4K HDR V1s in Boston. Or, gosh, we go to Minnesota and we go to Colorado and we go to LA, and now all of a sudden we have some people that are really good that we didn't know about before. To me, that's what the barometer of success is going to be. Timelines, I can tell you we've got some people that 2 weeks into it, our technicians come back and say, ready, right? Smartest kid I've ever worked with, ready to go. Some people take a little bit longer, right? Some people could take a month, 2 months. And I would say things like TD and A1 and V1 are probably a little bit longer lead time. But, and that's the other thing too. We got to remember, folks, they're not going to be perfect, right? We're all going to have to bite our tongues. Tell your producers and directors, going to have to bite their tongues. You might actually have to direct a game instead of just pointing at monitors. Right, you might actually have to have a camera meeting that lasts longer than 6.5 minutes. The producer might actually have to sit in the EVS room, the replay room, for an hour and kind of explain how they want the replays to come back. And listen, I think as RSN leaders, I think you have to do everything you can to make it as positive an environment as you can for everybody working, right? I know what Mike Webb and the folks at Yes Network do. I know what Mike McCarthy does. I know what Kendall does. I know what Howard and the Nesson people do, right? And let me tell you, it's little things, right? It's showing up on site and having a cooler full of ice cold water on a hot day, right? It's not giving somebody a hard time about being gone for an hour and 4 minutes on a lunch, right? It's about thanking somebody, right? When I worked in the field, and when I only worked on jobs that our company did, when I would shake hands at the end of the night, I always said the same thing. Thank you for working for us, right? And everyone to this day reminds me of that all the time, right? How many producers and how many directors, and I've been fortunate to work with a couple of the great guys of all time, two of the great directors out of Atlanta, Lonnie Dale and Renardo Lowe, and every time I did a Turner game, literally at the end of the game, before he cut cameras, they would go through, thank you, Bob, thank you, Joe, thank you, Carl, 1, 2, and 3 are clear. You know, thank you, Derek, thank you, Tom, thank you, Karen, 4, 5, and 6 are clear. I don't forget, I don't think any of us forget that, right? And so I think part of what we need to do as an industry is we need to pay better attention to how we take care of people. We pay everybody in 11 to 13 days. No one ever waits for a paycheck for us, regardless of whether y'all pay me or not. Some of you pay me really good, some of you take a little bit longer. But we pay our people so our technicians never ever have to worry about when my next paycheck's coming. They can look at their schedule, they can look on the mobile app, thank you ProCrewz, and they'll know what they're gonna get paid for tomorrow, July 1st. And by the way, almost all of our customers, you do a good job, right? I would just say this is some of the stuff that we need to be a little bit more aware of and talk to our front bench people about.
Right. Any other questions, comments? Devin?
I think I want to know. So in this new program, will there, like, to me, there's 3 levels of training, right?
We want to record your question for posterity, Devin. Hold
Oh,
on.
there we go. To me, there's 3 levels of training. So there's the junior college kid that wants to get into this, let's say. Then there's the A2 that really wants to become an A1, which is a different level of training. And then there's new technology comes out, and our superstar A1 needs some training on how to do the new technology. Will all 3 of those different buckets of training be handled in these programs?
Yeah. I mean, right, training's training, right? No matter whether it's an A2 that wants to be an A1, which is, I have no idea why you'd want to do that. You know, whether it's the new kid or whether it's a young person coming into the business, you know, whether it's an older technician that we're getting up to speed on newer technology. And by the way, let me tell you something. I'm going to blow everybody's mojo here. It's just as hard to find somebody to work on a Rush Media truck as it is to find somebody to work on one of Pat or Phil or NEP's 53-foot triple expandos, right? In fact, I would tell you sometimes it's even harder, right? Because I can go into any of their 3 trucks and I know I'm going to see a CalRec audio board, I'm going to see a Grass Valley switcher, I'm going to see EVS, I'm not going to see a black magic switcher. I'm not going to see 3-play. I'm not going to see a scaled down graphics, right? And so sometimes it's harder for us, or a Yamaha audio board. Sometimes it's harder for us to find people. So it's important for us. And by the way, we're working with those people, with the Rush Medias and the LTNs and the Gravity. I almost pointed at Will. And we're using those opportunities too to say, hey, we just had a really young camera operator who was out in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who we've never heard of before. And he or she did a spectacular job. Let's get that, let's find out what their career goals are. And we get on the horn and we talk to them and we do everything we can to try to help and support them through the process.
Awesome, thanks, Bob. And to Howard's point, I think in December at our summit in New York, we're figuring out our schedule now, but we're going to block out about 2 to 3 hours for this topic, which isn't quite 7, but it'll get a good start. Because I think, and one of the challenges obviously is we want to have a conversation where we're not just kind of spinning around the room kind of like for 2 hours. Let's kind of figure out some pragmatic topics to discuss and ways to solve these issues. So with that said, thanks, Bob, so much for all your support. Good to see you as always.
Thank you, everybody.